Welcome back to Season 2 of the Sober Motivation Podcast. Join me, Brad, each week as my guests and I share incredible and powerful sobriety stories. We are here to show sobriety is possible, one story at a time. Let's go! Leah McSweeney started using drugs and drinking at 14 years old and says she never had a regular drink. She always wanted more. After many treatment center stays and attempts at recovery meetings, she could not stay sober. Leah launched her fashion brand, Married to the Mob, and it was a hit. She was also on the show, The Real Housewives of New York City, and her struggle with alcohol was broadcasted on national television. Leah knew the show could not go on and decided to get completely sober. And this is her story on the Sober Motivation Podcast. At Sober Buddy, we have a massive update for all of our fans. We all know how important connection and community is when it comes to staying sober. So we have added in a new Sober Buddy community feature to the app that includes private community groups, news feed, direct messages, personal profiles, and maybe my favorite, daily hosted topic-centered live groups right in the Sober Buddy app, hosted by Sober Buddy team members. You can catch me on the app Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Download it today. You're going to love these new features.
Guess I'm drinking more than most, at least that's what you told me. I started reaching for it anytime I was anxious or lonely. These days that's all I feel unless I've got one in my hands. And when it's coursing through my veins, it makes me less than what I am. So Lord have mercy on an addicted heart like mine, who could probably do some good if he wasn't drinking all the time.
I came across Mike Kinnebrew on Instagram, and this is one of his songs, What's Left of Me, and I just thought it did a really good job explaining what things are like. So I hope you enjoyed it. I loved it. Now let's get to the show. Welcome back to another episode of the Sober Motivation Podcast. Today we have Leah McSweeney on the show with us. You may recognize her from the Real Housewives of New York City. How are you doing today, Leah?
I'm great. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be sober. And I'm just looking forward to doing this.
Why don't you start us off in the beginning? What was it like for you growing up?
So, I was born in Manhattan in 1982, and I grew up on 24th Street and 8th Avenue in Chelsea, which is like the gay mecca of the world. And it was just a very cool neighborhood to grow up in. It was extremely diverse. There were, I remember just seeing like drag queens walking down the street. And, it was the 80s in New York City. I mean, I didn't know anything different, but like now in hindsight, I know I got to grow up during a very special time, like in New York City. Like some people would say there was like so much crime and this and that, but there was like so much culture also. Should I just get right into like fucking drugs and alcohol and like how it started and like.
That's a great idea. Let's get into it.
The thing is like, I kind of always, and look, I had like, my parents were, I came from like a pretty happy home. I was not abused. I was not starved. I was not, there was nothing, it wasn't perfect, but it wasn't like horrible, and it's interesting because like, addiction and alcoholism doesn't discriminate. Like you can have a great childhood or like the worst childhood in the world. Like it doesn't make a difference sometimes, like you could have the worst childhood and not end up like smoking meth at age 14. You could like not make those decisions. So, but my mother is sober. My mother's been sober for like 42 years. She got sober 2 years before I was born. So there's a lot of alcoholism in my family, and she was very worried that I was going to be an alcoholic. I think it was a huge fear of hers. And she would never let me taste wine or beer growing up. When all my cousins, I have a huge like Irish and Italian family. And all my cousins, like I have like 20 cousins or something, they were all allowed to like taste wine and beer and I couldn't. And it drove me fucking crazy. Like it made me want the wine and beer so badly. that when I made my first communion, I was chugging the wine and wouldn't let go of the cup that the priest was holding, and he was like prying it out of my hand. So I really think that like even like as like a young teenager, like as a even like 12-year-old, like before I was doing drugs and drinking, I was kind of like, you know what? I want to try acid. Like that seems cool to me. I don't know. My dad went to Woodstock and he was like he's not a hippie. And the other thing is like, I didn't grow up with parents like drinking or doing drugs or anything like that. But for some reason, was very I romanticized it, like the movie Kids came out when I was like in 8th grade. And even though it's like the most fucked up movie in the world, I thought it was so cool. There was the whole like skate scene and rave culture in New York City in the 90s. And I wanted to be a part of it. We moved to Connecticut when I was 14, which by then I had already started drinking. So I started like smoking weed and drinking when I was like 13, which I thought was like normal. We were like drinking 40s and smoking blunts and like we thought it was so cool. And it was not that like nothing was like very dark yet, like nothing bad had happened. Well, I got thrown out of school. That was pretty bad, but it had nothing to do with like the drinking and stuff. We moved to Connecticut when I was 14, and I think my parents thought it was going to be a very like smart, safe place for us to live. But what I don't think they realize is that like, first of all, I know how to get on the train and go back to the city. There's drugs in Connecticut, lots of them. I actually probably know more heroin addicts and kids that have died from Connecticut than I do from New York City. So when I moved to Connecticut, I just found the kids that did drugs right away, and it went from drinking and smoking weed to going to raves and doing crystal meth and acid within a year. Like it went very quickly. And, I never had a normal drink ever. I never could have a drink or like just got regular drunk and was like, oh, I'm not going to do that again. It was like full on blackout drinking. I was like I was a storm. Like I was just, and I was insatiable. I just wanted more and more. I went to my first rehab by the time I was 15. I think that like my mom, I had been like, I would not come home for like 5 days in a row, or, I would call her from like a payphone in the city and be like, I'm fine. Like I'm good. But I was addicted to raves and to getting high. And like, that's when I felt at peace, was like when I was on like fucking 5 different kinds of drugs in a dark club with music pounding. Like I did not want to be anywhere else. Like that was when I felt okay. And I don't know why it never felt okay to be me, and I don't know if there was like mental health issues on top of I don't know what came first, like maybe I was depressed and anxious as a kid. And like, that's why I also wanted to do drugs. I don't even know at this point. I went to my first rehab at 15. And the crazy thing is like, when I went to that rehab, which my parents totally tricked me into going to, like, I remember like I woke up and normally like I had like when I woke up for school, it was dark out. So when I woke up this morning, it was light out. And I'm like, this is weird. Why would my parents let me sleep in today? And I went downstairs and I'm like, what's going on, guys? And they were being so weird. And I'm like, did grandma die? Like, what's going on? And then I saw my bags packed and sitting on the dining table. And I was like, oh my God, this is so bad. I'm like, where am I going? Like, where are you bringing me? And they're like, can you come in and talk to us like in the bedroom? And I'm going to say like, my parents did their best dealing with me. Was it like, they were trying their best. Like, to me, I felt like they were talking to me like I was a robot, which I didn't appreciate, but they didn't know what the fuck to do. They had like a meth addicted, like 14-year-old, 15-year-old kid, right? It's like crazy. I don't know what the fuck I would do if my daughter was how I was. So I remember my mom was like, we found a place for you. It's going to be very helpful. And I was like, hell no, fuck you. I'm not fucking going. You're crazy. They're like, please just drive with us there. And you can just like check it out. And if you don't like it, we'll leave. Yeah, right. So we drove 4 hours to Pennsylvania to the Karen Foundation. We like checked it out and everything. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to be here. I don't need to be here. I don't have a problem. And they're like, why don't you spend one night here and just see how you like it? There's other kids, like, it's fine. It's just one day. And I was like, oh, fine. But I said to my dad, I'm out of cigarettes. I get me a pack of Newports because I'm out of cigarettes. He comes back He goes drive somewhere. He comes back with a carton of Newports. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, what, Dad, why did you buy me a carton? And he's like, they were out of single packs. And I still didn't
You're
get
gonna be there for a while.
it. Exactly. I still didn't get it. I was so naive. And I was probably still like high because I was literally gone for 7 days at like rave after rave right before this. And it was the first week of like sophomore year in school. So I'm like, all right. So I, get checked in and I'm like talking to the other kids and I'm like, yeah, I'm leaving tomorrow. Like, yeah, I'm not staying here. And they were like, yeah, right. They're like, you're not leaving. They're like, you can't even make a phone call to your parents till you've been here for 1 week. And I was like, I fucking cried for I cried for a whole week straight. Like, I just cried and cried. And I didn't talk to anyone. And I just cried about everything. I cried about moving out of the city. I cried about missing my friends. I cried about being on drugs. I just was like crying. And then one day we were in group and the counselor said, you guys are addicts. You don't have a red light in your brain to tell you when to stop like other people. You have a green light that just says go, 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 go. And when she said that, I was like, it clicked. And I knew I had this disease. It didn't stop me from doing drugs and drinking for the next fucking decade and more than decade,
Yeah.
But I knew, and I also always was like pretty spiritual. I don't know, like I wasn't like I mean I went to Catholic school and stuff. Now I converted to Judaism, but I was always spiritual. I always believed in God, and like doing drugs, like I always felt like I don't know, it was hallucinogenics. I felt like I went to other realms and all of that, but like I knew that if I kept doing drugs and drinking, I wasn't going to be on the path that the universe really had. I wouldn't be able to like feel the flow of where I was supposed to go and what my life was supposed to be, but I couldn't stop. That rehab, was just one of many. I got out. I didn't really stay sober, maybe for a little bit. I went to 12-step programs and I was 15 years old. Who the fuck really is going to get sober at 15?
I'm just wondering, with the rehab, how long were you at the rehab for?
28 days.
28 days. Okay. I have a similar story. When I was 17, I was out of control and school, jail, everything. And I was in a psych ward. I was feeling suicidal. So I was at a psych ward, UNC Chapel Hill, the hospital there. And my parents had mentioned to me about going to rehab. I wasn't into drugs at this point, but I was more of like a behavioral thing. It was definitely a red flag. My parents got help, intervention, and everybody, red flag, this is what's coming. So my parents are trying to intervene. So I was in the psych ward and these two security guards, they were security guards of some sort, came into the bedroom, kicked the bed. It's a little metal bed there, and woke me up and they're like, you're going to rehab. And I was kind of like you too, that there's no way that this is going to happen. I went to this place in Knoxville, Tennessee called Peninsula.
I was going to say the crazy thing is like you were in a psych ward being stressed out about going to rehab, which I think rehab's better than a psych ward.
Yeah, except the psych ward stays were only about 7 days. The rehab stay was 12 months. So, yeah. So at 17, I was kind of pulled from my life. I went with these two security guards. They drove me to this place. I actually ran away from them, and they had like this big search for me with the sheriff, state troopers, and everything from these people. But I went to this place. It was a lockdown program because I wouldn't have stayed anywhere.
Where was it?
This was in Knoxville, Tennessee, Peninsula Village. So it was 3 sides water, Tennessee River. So you couldn't really escape. There was one road kind of out of this place. There was it was like chicken wire, but hardcore stuff on the windows. And your first like 3 months, you were in a basement of this cafeteria. Then after that, you graduated to an outdoor program, but you had to sit on your bed all day. You couldn't talk. This was like, it was wild. Looking back, it was wild.
I don't know if that's legal now. I think Paris Hilton's trying to change those laws about these places.
Yes. Yeah. It's not around anymore. I mean, there's so many lawsuits and stuff from the trauma caused. I mean, it did do good for me. I mean, obviously, same as what you're sharing here. Afterwards, I got out and I actually started doing drugs afterwards. So it's an interesting sort of concept, but it did play a purpose. But I had to share a little bit about that story about, picking
hardcore.
up.
The most I ever stayed at a rehab was 90 days, because then I went back to rehab. I went back like again at 17, I went back again at 18. You know, it was just it was a series of just like everything falling apart constantly, you know. I mean, just like I would get out. I remember I went to the rehab in upstate New York and I was like, okay, I'm gonna get off crystal meth because I don't want to look like shit. And that was my big thing. It was just a vanity thing. And when I got out, the next day I went to a rave and I did every single drug. I did ecstasy, acid, special K, angel dust, but I didn't do crystal. So I was like, okay, I'm good. I didn't do crystal. I mean, it was like nuts, you know? Finally, I was like, okay, I should probably stop like doing these hard drugs and I'll just like drink instead. And I had met the future father of my child when I was 20. And this is after I'd been lived in a halfway house for a few months. And, after I got out of the 90-day treatment program, my mother tried to send me to a therapeutic community run by nuns. And that was supposed to be a year-long program, but it was like all mandated by the court, except for me. Like all the girls were mandated by the court and I wasn't. And I was like, I'm not fucking staying here. This is like it was just not for me at all. I somehow kind of got my life together. Like I was like interning at like fashion magazines and I was still partying, but it was like, to me, looked better, because it was just drinking and it was like a lot less, like I wasn't hanging out with like criminals, like it was just a little more harmless kind of. And I managed to start my brand, Married to the Mob, and I put so much of my life into that brand at a very young age, and it gave me purpose. And I think that like the energy that I put into finding drugs and going to clubs and all of that, I then put all that energy into my brand, And even though I was still drinking and things like that, I was managing to grow a business that was, becoming successful. And my life was changing. And I was like, I went from like basically a teenage delinquent to this girl with like, working with Cause and Nike and like being flown to Paris to like do stuff with MCM. And my life did a fucking 180 to the point where I was like, well, I'm not an addict or an alcoholic, because if I was, how would this have happened? Now I have this brand. I'm living in a loft in Tribeca. Like, I'm doing very well for myself at this very young age. And I'm like, wow. And all my friends' parents were like, you've turned your life around. This is incredible. We thought you were going to be dead. So I was like, fuck being sober, because I can obviously be successful and I was just like, wow, I did it, like I did it. I fucking, made it happen. And I got pregnant. I had my daughter when I was 25. And I think that's when things shifted for me. Like I couldn't drink the way I wanted to anymore without people being like, yo, you have a newborn. Like you can't get blackout drunk anymore. You can't like go out anymore. Like it just, everything was different. And obviously I was still an alcoholic. I was still an addict, and having a baby wasn't going to change that. It just made it more obvious, because the things I could get away with before, I was getting away with it because I had success and I had these outside things that looked like, wow, she changed her life around so much. But now I have a newborn and I'm like, like her dad is taking care of her. I'm out like, getting wasted and coming home and I'm throwing up in the toilet. I'm sick. And, it became so dark. Like that's when it changed. Like it was like, this is not fun anymore. Like I'm not the mother that I thought I was going to be. And I broke up with her dad. And, when she was around 2, I drank for the first 2 years of her life and like did drugs too, cocaine mainly. I became like my body and my soul like separated. And I was the most empty feeling that I've ever been in my fucking life. On the board, I was dead. Like I felt like I was dead. I wasn't like suicidal, but like it was going there. It was like, what's the point of living like this? And I kept doing everything I could except go, and I'll just say, go to a meeting, because I knew that existed and that's where I could go. But I was doing everything. I called this like celebrity, like psychic, and I was like, am I an alcoholic? And she was like, you are not an alcoholic, but you should stop drinking. And I'm like, fuck that. She doesn't know what she's talking about. And then I was like, going on these fasts and like doing everything I could to make me feel better, except stop drinking. Finally, I was taking the train home from work, from my office during rush hour. And, the train was packed. and I'm just sitting up against the door, like, you know, zoning out, like being like, what is my life? And I had a total like white light experience, like they talk about in the big book. I had a spiritual experience. I had an out of body experience. I went out of my body and I saw my life without me. And I was like, God just told me that I'm not making it to my birthday this year. And that was in like November or October of 2000. That was November of 2009. I think I had one more drink after that. And then that was it. I started getting help, you know. I managed to stay sober for like almost a decade, but it didn't come without its challenges. I ended up in a psych ward while sober because I was like dating a psycho alcoholic. You know, I wasn't doing the things I should have been doing. Like I wasn't drinking, but I was like seeking like cough syrup with codeine whenever I had a cough. Like I wouldn't fully commit to being totally sober. And to be honest, I started drinking again because that happens when you stop going to meetings. And I drank for a year. It was televised on television on the Real Housewives of New York. And when the pandemic started, I didn't want to stop drinking at that point. It had been like a year, but I did. And you know, it wasn't as dramatic as my first experience in 2009. I knew what to do. I knew where to go, but I was kind of white knuckling it. I wasn't going to meetings again. I was smoking weed, and I'm going to have a year back on January 3rd because that's when I realized like, okay, no more weed, no more med seeking, you know, no more Xanax sometimes, like just none of that. Like I need to recommit to my sobriety to stay sober and put it before anything else. So I'm going to have a year back January 3rd. And, you know, I was in the psych ward in January. It was a horrible, like I went through the worst depression of my life. And I think that had I been putting my sobriety first, that wouldn't have happened, you know? So I've really kind of been through the ring, but it's all, you know, it's all good. Like I'm very grateful for that relapse. And I'm very grateful for that bottom that I hit, which was unlike any bottom that I'd ever hit before. Because I don't forget it. And obviously we only had today, but I have a gratitude for my sobriety that I feel like I've never had before. You know, like I could get teary thinking about like I have a year back. I'm so grateful for that year, you know, like by now I would have had 13 years if I had stayed sober, but like I don't even fucking care. You know, I don't care. It's like I had to go through what I had to go through. And it's just a different journey for everybody.
Yeah, that's the truth. Everybody has a different journey for how they get to it, and in relapse is a big part of a lot of people's stories to go back out. I mean, I think for me, my mind wants to play the trick that I can figure this out. Like I can figure it out. I can do this moderately. I can
Mm-hmm.
do all of this stuff, and I can figure it out. And you know, sometimes early on in my journey too, which was 12 years ago now, but early on and even before that, I tried to get sober and I tried to do this and I tried so hard to keep everything together. And now when I get those thoughts, even 12 years later, I mean, my mind's like, yeah, you could figure this out, you know, at the ball game or the hockey game or with the boys, you can figure this stuff out. Like everybody's doing it. I just remind myself too, that like you tried everything, Brad, you really tried everything to keep this stuff in your life, the cocaine, the drinking, the pills, the heroin. You exhausted all opportunity, and that just keeps me on track. But I love the part where you mentioned about gratitude, because I feel like that's a huge thing, because life still happens in recovery. Stuff still goes on, and to be able to remain grateful, be present for things is like a true skill I feel that we learn throughout recovery.
It's really hard. And, you know, just like you saying, like you could figure it out. And it's not, I will tell you that before I picked up that drink after almost 10 years of not drinking, the thoughts that went through my mind were, you're not like them. You're different now than you were before. You can definitely do this moderately because you respect yourself now. You respect your life. You have a different perspective. And within like, you know, a few months, I was blackout drinking. I was doing coke when I was drunk. I was, you know, it was a mess so quick that it's like, I proved to myself, like you know, and it's crazy because I'm a very disciplined person. I can be very disciplined with my diet. I can be disciplined with my working out. I can be disciplined with my job, my work, my career, everything. But when it comes to alcohol, it does not matter how hard I try to control my drinking. It is absolutely out of my fucking control. Something goes off and that's it. I can't. Like, it's just, I proved it to myself. I did. Yeah, you mentioned heroin. I tried heroin a couple times because like I wanted to try all drugs, honestly. I never smoked crack, even though I did want to, but my friend who was smoking crack wouldn't give me any. But I never liked heroin, thank God. I did it a couple times and I was like, oh, I just felt like I wanted to throw up. It was, I hated it. I liked uppers. So, but and it's really scary. All these people are dying of fentanyl. They think that they're buying some coke and they're just doing a little coke with their friends and then they're fucking dead. I just read in the Wall Street Journal 3 people died from the same delivery service in New York City. One girl who was only 24, who just became a lawyer, one girl who's a social worker, and one guy who was, I don't know, a business guy. I don't know. It's so sad. It's horrible.
Yeah, that definitely is the tragedy that's going on right now, is that it's the poisoning aspect of things. So some people are having a hard time understanding this, that there's a difference between somebody who's struggling with substance use and intends to buy something but gets something else. It would be like buying a steak from the store, but you don't get a steak, you get rat poison in your steak, but you were intending to buy it. And some people are like confused with this idea of like, well, addicts are making a choice, and it's like, no, nobody's making that choice. We are choosing to buy Xanax or cocaine, but not something that's going to kill people. It's interesting though. Yeah. It's really interesting though. I think one of the worst things, I heard this a while back, for somebody who's addicted to gambling, right? The worst thing for them is to win, because when you win, then you get that rush, that idea that it's only a matter of time before I get it again. And I think one of the worst things for somebody like us who struggles with the drugs and the drinking is that when we can do it and it doesn't end up being a big disaster. That was always a struggle for me, because every time I drank, every time I did drugs, it wasn't this big blowout. Like the next day I'd wake up, everything would be good. I didn't destroy anything. I didn't steal anything, and things were good. And that really messed with me when I was working on getting sober, is that I was like, every time it's not bad. Sometimes I could, it would be a regular night out with things. Right. So I don't know.
Yeah, I know. Well, I know sometimes like I've had friends be like, oh, you were like a high functioning alcoholic and drug addict. But at the same time, it's like, was I really? Like, I don't know. Like maybe I was able to like, continue working and like growing my business. But I was like also like ending up like passed out and in my own throw up and like losing my bag and my purse and my jacket in like a snowstorm and having no idea how I got home, which is like not really high functioning either. And like, I'm going to push back on you saying that it wasn't a disaster either, because you were like in a fucking jail at age 17. So it's like,
It was, yeah. Not every time though, but yeah.
Yeah, no, not, of course not every time for me either, but like,
it definitely created constant chaos. Yeah, jail was terrible. The first time I got arrested, I'll share this story really quick. I haven't shared it before here. The first time I got arrested, to basically in North Carolina at 16 years old, you get charged with a felony. You're an adult, so you go to like the big jail downtown and all that fun stuff. God. I was 16 or 17, so I went there, and a couple buddies and I, we were breaking into garages. And just helping ourselves to stuff terrible to do. And so we got arrested for this, obviously. And I was in this cell, was probably a 10 by 10 cell with this guy. He was probably in his 20s, and he was being charged with, I don't know how the story played out, but for killing somebody in New York. And then he was taking the train system down, trying to get to Florida. This is what the guy told me. I asked him, I was so naive. I never, my future experiences in jail, you never asked that stuff. And this guy was sobbing and on the phone, and I asked this guy, and I thought for sure after that I was going to I was like, my parents bailed me out. I was about like maybe 3 hours in, and my parents bailed me out. And I just was like, my God, I looked up at the sky. I was like, my God, I said, whatever it's going to take. I'm going to change after this. And that was just the beginning. But Sort
You
of
didn't change after that.
no, it was only six. I was 16 or 17 around there. No, I didn't. That was
Oh,
just
right. No, you're so young. Yeah.
yeah. That was just the beginning of things. And then I was actually in jail for a year. And another time too. That's when I really changed. That's when I kind of made the changes in my life after.
Positive. That was a positive thing then, I guess.
Yeah. It was the best thing that ever happened. A long story short, I ended up selling drugs to an informant like 2 years before this. And then 2 years later, I was living up in Canada. I had gotten sober. I was living with my grandparents at the time, and I was going back to visit my family in North Carolina. When I got off the airplane, the cops were there waiting with my mugshot. And I was like, I was talking to this other girl too on the flight there, and like it was good. And then I just saw her face when these cops were there, like arresting me. I'm like,
Oh my
like
God.
you're the worst guy in the world here. The plane just lands and you're getting arrested. But yeah, and then I went to jail, and that was for selling stuff to this undercover police officer with a buddy of mine. Of course, a buddy of mine set me up on this deal, which it is what it is. I mean, no hard feelings. But and then after that, I was sent back to Canada, and that's kind of when things started over for me. So I mean, it was a beautiful like thing at the time, though it wasn't. But how does your life look now in sobriety, though? Like, and also I was wondering too, because you relapsed while you were doing the show, right? What
I
was
relapsed before. I
before?
relapsed before the show. Yeah, before maybe like I relapsed in like May or April, and then I started filming in August.
Okay. And what was that like?
Oh my God. So when I found out in August, because I found out I was going to do the show, and then 3 weeks later we were filming. It's not like I had a lot of time to be like, well, I should stop drinking now. But when I found out that I had that I was going to be on the show, I had been on a bender for 3 days, like Adderall, fucking Coke, fucking drinking. I felt so sick, and I got the call from the production company, like, well, they want you, like, congratulations. And I was like, oh my God. And I couldn't even process it, like I was like, what? And this is actually, I've never told this story before. I'm going to tell it here. It might end up on page 6, just saying. So they had me the next day. They wanted me to go hang out with Tinsley, which was the other girl. And I had met her before. But they wanted me to go like meet up with her and, just start really vibing before we started filming together. And I was like really hungover. So I'm like, I guess I'm gonna just have a couple drinks with her so I'm not so hungover. Well, we start drinking and all, 5 glasses of wine in, and I'm like, let's go to a party. Like, let's go to this loft party that my sister's at. We go there. Someone there has Coke. And so this was the first time that I did Coke since I started drinking in May or April. So right before I start like filming, like I end up doing low, which I think, and then I like ended up going to like this club, the Box. Not with Tinsley, didn't do any drugs or anything like that, and she didn't come with me to the club. But I like lost my Chanel bag and my jacket, and it was such a disaster. And I think I did like laced Coke with something because I was so physically sick for 2 weeks, like hot flashes, like I mean, I can't even get into like how sick I was because it's like gross. Like I was going to the doctor, like, what's wrong with me? Like something's wrong with me. I was having like also panic attacks that wouldn't stop. And the producers were calling me like, hey, can we come over and like talk to you about like what we're going to film? And I was like, you know what? I have like food poisoning or something. And like, I'm not feeling great. And they were starting to get worried because I was like, I don't think I'm going to be healed enough. But I also might have been like having like a full on like anxiety, like mental breakdown over being on the show because I was realizing like how much it was going to change my life. Finally, I was like, got my shit together and like had the producers come over and I started filming. But I knew, I was like, wait, like I just started drinking after a decade of not drinking. I know how I am when I'm drunk. I need to wash my ass because like, how am I going to be on this show and not look like a hot mess? And I was like, I don't want the drinking to be a thing. And of course it's like, I can't hide it. Like I couldn't hide it. Like my mother was pissed at me that I was drinking again. That became a whole issue. Look, I'll say they edited me very nicely. They, gave me a lot of grace, and my drunk moments were very entertaining and light and funny. And I was kind of enjoying myself drinking at the, like I really was. And plus those women that are on the show are like the wildest drinkers too. So like I kind of just meshed right in with them. No one was judging me on my drinking because they get so drunk too. So I felt like I was right at home with them. But it was definitely weird to see myself blackout drunk on national television, naked, throwing tiki torches. You know what I mean? So, but I don't know. It was like, I have no regrets. I think that like luckily I didn't do any serious harm to myself or anybody else. I made some great TV moments. I made people really happy and entertained during the pandemic. And luckily I was able to come back. And a lot of people don't come back, and that's the fucked up part. But I luckily was able to get sober again, and
Yeah.
also be able to talk about it on that platform, which I think is very cool.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's a massive platform for sure. What does your life look like now in sobriety?
It's the most important thing, I mean, I have a sponsor, I reach out to newcomers, like I try to go to meetings as much as possible. I, meditate, I pray. I mean, I'm still a hot mess, I mean, I have a very hard time turning things over. Because life is still life. And I deal with, depression issues and things like that. And I was really over medicated on a lot of psych meds when I first got sober, and they weren't helping. They weren't helping at all. And now I'm on like just an antidepressant. But I know if I don't stay sober, I can't handle any of that. So it's the number one priority in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you on that for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely for drinking and drugging, it's definitely hard to get any of the mental health stuff figured out because I feel like just too many moving pieces, right? So, what advice would you give to somebody if they were struggling to get sober or to stay sober? The holidays are coming up too. Like, I don't know about you, but for me, for a lot of people I know, the holidays, there's a lot of downtime. There's a lot of stress. There's like everything that could trigger somebody will probably
Family.
come up. Oh my,
Families. I
like,
mean, that's like the most, I started taking my daughter to Jamaica every Christmas so I wouldn't have to deal with family stuff. But this year I'm not, and I'm going to be spending it with my family. But my suggestion would be stay in touch with sober people because you can't do it alone. It's all about community. And it's like when I call one of my sober friends and have a conversation, just having this conversation with you, I woke up with the worst anxiety today. I was like shaky. I like didn't feel well. I feel so much better just connecting with another sober person and remembering all the stuff that I have to be grateful for. So I think if anyone's struggling with getting sober or staying sober, like stay close to the program, the program. Stay close to sober people, and pray. Like I just pray. I mean, it's not, and I know it's silly because I hate when people tell me if I'm like depressed, they're like, try to pray. It's like, no, it's not going to take my depression away. But prayer is powerful, and meditation, that shit is really more powerful than prayer to me because and like Huberman had a great podcast about what it actually changes your brain, and I'm into healing my brain because I really believe that it's all up there, So meditating, and I know that's like hard, but it's not. You just sit, you go on the fucking Waking Up app, that Sam Harris app I have, Waking Up. It's fucking amazing. There's so many things. You can do it for 5 minutes, you can do it for 20 minutes. That shit changes your brain. It makes you feel so much better.
yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, no, there's a lot more stuff like research and a lot more evidence, scientific stuff coming out for all of these different things. I feel like, gee, when I first started this journey, and even like way after that, there was no talk of meditation, no talk of breath work, no talk of all these other alternative ways that we can kind of stop ourselves and kind of reset, get back on track. I love that though. The community part is massive.
It's so important. And also so much of I don't know, like addicts, like with our impulse control, we have impulse control issues, like the fight or flight shit, like meditating and breath work changes all of that. Like it shuts it, it kind of slows it down. And I'm always focusing on my breathing because when I have stress, I feel like I can't breathe. That's like how it manifests in me. So Yeah, I've been all in on that. Like aside from just my regular meetings and stuff, I'm all in on like therapy and all that shit.
All around approach.
Outside help is so important. We all need outside help because not only like even if you didn't have trauma like as a child, like you if you're an addict or alcoholic, that shit is traumatic and it creates traumatic events in your life.
That is so true. I'm thinking that we're at a good spot here to finish things up. This has been incredible. I appreciate you so much for coming on here.
I appreciate you and all you're doing. You're helping so many people. Just like your Instagram showing these stories, the before and after photos of people. Sometimes it touches my heart, you know, like it really does. Like seeing how far people come. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. Did you have anything for closing that you'd like to share?
Just that you know, we're living in a crazy time. Like we all collectively are probably reeling from uh you know, COVID and having to live in a shut down world that has impacted so many people in such a negative way. I mean, suicides are up, overdoses are up, teenagers are using drugs, they're depressed. I think we have to be loud and out and open about addiction and have to break the stigma around it because like there's a global crisis going on with addiction. And the only way we're going to be able to help is just to be open about our stories and our struggles.
And that's the truth. That's what this whole platform is built on, and you sharing your story is definitely going to be helpful for people. And I feel like that's the big barrier. Like when I first started out, I didn't know sober people. I didn't know it existed. I didn't know that my life wasn't going to be boring if I went down
Mhm.
this road. And now it's like everybody's speaking out and sharing their story. People can connect with it. People can identify with different parts of our stories, even though it's not the same story for everybody, but there's parts that we can all gather from, and to find out that other people figure out a way to make it through, I think is just so powerful to have other people that, and especially people that look up to you. It's and on such a grand scale. Like I was talking with another guy yesterday. He was on Think You Can Dance, Dan. And I'm like, I don't know how you guys do this TV thing. I can barely do the podcast thing, and we don't even use the video. And
It's hard.
I'm sweating everywhere doing this.
It's hard. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
So yeah, you guys are incredible. And yeah, keep sharing your story. And I can't thank you enough. Honestly, this has been
Thanks,
nothing short of
Brad.
amazing.
Thanks so much. So great talking to you.
Well, there's another incredible episode in the books. I hope you all enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I had a lot of fun recording this, doing the editing afterwards, and I can't wait for it to be out for everybody to check out. Leah did an incredible job to come on here and be open, honest, and transparent with her story in hopes to crush the stigma. She talks a lot about that, and I can't thank her enough for being a big voice for us out there in the world. If you enjoyed this episode, just like I always ask, don't forget to leave a review on your favorite podcasting platform. Next episode on the podcast is going to be Frankie Loyal from Mayans. If you've seen it on FX, it's the badass biker show. So stay tuned for that. That'll be dropping this week. But until then, I'm out.